Hi there, and welcome back to the Caffeinated Classroom. If this is your first time here, my name is Marie. I'm a high school English teacher in San Diego, California, and I have been on a YouTube hiatus for quite some time, and I am really excited to be back. I was hoping this video would be in my classroom. However, it is currently still summer break for me, and I am locked out because we're having some construction done on our campus. And so I have you here in my little home office, and I'm really excited because I have been starting to slowly think through what is going to be happening in my classroom in a matter of just a couple of weeks, which is I'm gonna have kids there. We're gonna be starting a whole new school year, and things are gonna get crazy quicker than I even realize it. So I wanted to do a little unit walkthrough. It'll help me kind of piece some things together as I'm putting this unit back onto a calendar for a whole brand new year. And this unit that I'm talking about today is all about fairy tales. It's really a short story unit that I have created using fairy tales, and it is something that I talked about on my podcast, the Brave New Teaching podcast. I will link the episode that I am referring to down below in the podcast that is, or sorry, the blog post that is linked down below this video. You can get a link to the podcast episode I'm talking about, where I did kind of like a makeover of the unit with my co-host, my good friend Amanda. If you don't already know her, you're gonna love her as much as I do. But we got so many questions about this unit. Like, can we have more? Will you do a walkthrough? So I decided, yeah, I'll do a walkthrough. It will be mutually beneficial, or mutually beneficial. You know, if you want to speak correctly or not, it's totally up to you here at the Caffeinated Classroom. Choose your own adventure story. But I've got a unit that I am pretty excited to show you. It's a mini unit, really. Like, it's one of those things that could be expanded longer or kept kind of small. I do this at the very beginning of the year, and so it's kind of a quick one. You know, if you listen to the podcast episode, and I highly encourage that you do so, you'll hear just the whole context behind, I have all my notes printed out. You'll hear the context behind the whole entire unit, which is, long story short, it's the first thing that I'm going to be teaching. I teach this unit in a world literature class for seniors. And so it's like, get right out of the gate. It's one of those units where we English teachers like to teach short stories to kind of like bring in all the background knowledge, remind students what they already know, you know, like recalling prior knowledge, and using things that are small and easily digestible, like short stories, to create common experience within our classrooms. So we talk a lot about the short story unit in the podcast episode. We also talk about best practices for teaching a genre specific, or like a text, I don't know what we call that, format specific unit, like a short story unit, and like how and why I landed on a fairy tale unit. Today I'm really just going to like walk through the unit itself. So what I have in front of me here is a little, you can kind of see my little unit calendar. I'm on a quarter system. For those of you who are either new around here or you just haven't heard me drone on about it before, I'm on a quarter system, which means that I see my students every single day of the week for 88 minutes a day. It also means that we have 9-week quarters. So within 18 weeks, 2 quarters, I'm done with my entire course. So things are pretty fast paced. My unit that we're going to talk through right now is about 2 weeks and change. It often takes longer. Like here, it's like, this is from this past year. It was Martin Luther King Day on a Monday, and then it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, a full week after, and then like a single week. We had like a Pro-Gro Day that next Monday or something. So it's like 10 days, but I think that I went a little bit longer on this one, or I should have gone a little bit longer on this one and expanded it a bit, and you'll kind of see why. So in any good unit, we're going to start with an essential question that's going to be guiding the whole entire thing. And the essential question for this unit is actually the essential question for my entire course, or my entire quarter anyways, which is, why do we tell stories? And it's broad enough and specific enough that it works really, really well for both the unit and the whole course essential question. And so on day one, I'm going to start with a pretty good gateway activity, or opening activity, or hook, or whatever it is that you're going to call it. We call it a gateway activity. And I'm going to start by asking the question and doing a little like quick write. Why do we tell stories? Tell a little story about like what I love about stories, and what are some of this, in fact, actually I have them all, like I have some of the things printed behind me that I give to my students. We do a little quick write on Why do we tell stories? What stories have stood out to you throughout your entire life? What fictional stories that you were told? What family stories or community stories? Like, is there something that a teacher told you one time, a long story, or what stories are part of your heritage, part of your identity? Getting into the importance of like oral tradition and pulling in a lot of background knowledge in that kind of a way. And just like, why do human beings tell stories? Why do we talk? Why are we social? Why are we sentient, right? In that way. And then we start digging into the elements of a fairy tale. So all on day one, we do what I call a one-word discussion. Why do we tell stories? They have to pick one word, and we do a whole like activity with a one-word discussion. That is also a podcast episode in our discussion series, which I will link in the blog post that is linked down below here. We do our essential question, a little discussion on stories and storytelling and the impact of stories, and then the elements of a fairy tale. And the elements of a fairy tale are literally like so simple. It's like basically a plot map, right? Like the, exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution, plus a few more elements that just exist in fairy tales. I have setting, characters, themes, other common elements, supernatural elements, and magic numbers. These are things that end up in fairy tales quite often. The other common elements are going to be things like a quote-unquote damsel in distress, and sometimes that's a true damsel in distress, and sometimes that's another character or entity standing in as the damsel, depending on like the social and historical context. And I have students do a little bit of research on their own. It's like a 3-minute speed research, see what you can find out about all of this, and then they share it to their small groups, and then their small groups share out to the whole entire class. It's a great way to get students to be a little bit responsible from like day one of real like content in the class, because this is actually day 2 of class period is when I started this unit. And then it also allows students a little bit of breathing room, and I can see as an instructor, it's a real diagnostic on where their research skills are. Are we just taking the first hits? What are you like from Google? What are they looking for? I'm able to observe a lot in something like a 3-minute quick speed research moment. And then we dive right into what is basically our anchor text for this unit. This unit is based in the story of Cinderella. And we read a lot of different versions of Cinderella. On day 1, we read / listen to the Brothers Grimm version of Cinderella, because it's complex, it's got literary merit, it is written in the very classic form of a fairy tale with a very clear beginning, middle, and end, and it's super, super dark. The Grimm, if you've never read the Brothers Grimm versions of fairy tales, they're really dark. And so we have a whole little conversation about all of that. And we take notes about the different elements of a fairy tale that we find in that version of Cinderella. Boom, that's day 1. Then the next thing that I like to do is we come in and we look at a lot more versions of Cinderella. We look at film versions of Cinderella, in fact, where students are asked to, I show them, let's see, what do I have? I've got like my slides printed out. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 5 different versions. I've got the trailers to 5 different versions of Cinderella. I've got the Disney Cinderella. I've got the, what are you? There's a 2015, the Disney live action Cinderella from 2015, the 2021 Cinderella from Amazon Prime, the 1998 Ever After, a Cinderella Story with Drew Barrymore, the 1997 Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella with Whitney Houston and Brandy. And so we watch all of those different trailers. And sorry, lost my train of thought there. We watch all of those trailers and students are asked to compare and contrast. I ask them a series of questions. What stands out to you? What similarities? What differences do you notice? And then we start getting into the meat of it. What can you tell from each of these different versions about the societal norms, the societal values about the place and time that this comes from? What this is going to lead us into is then backtracking and doing the same analysis on the Grimm version of the fairy tale that we did the day before. And then we'll be able to move forward and look at different versions from around the world of Cinderella. Virtually every culture that has a written, recorded storytelling has a version that is somewhat like a Cinderella story. And so that is the really cool part of this unit, in my opinion, is that after we look at the Brothers Grimm, after we look at some different like videos and movie versions, and we start to dig into what does the art that we create say about our society's values and our societal norms, then we can dig into some different types of stories that like bring in different world perspectives. So I have a bunch. Oh, I thought I had it with me. I don't. I'm sorry, friends, but I will link my list of books down below. I have a list of children's stories that I've spent a few years kind of curating. If you want to do something like this, you don't have to buy a bunch of children's books of different versions of Cinderella from around the world. You can go to your library. I am sure that your district probably has some sort of a subscription to like a children's book service. Like if you're a K-12 district, which we are, a few of the versions of Cinderella from around the world, they're all children's books, but some of them are digital versions because I use, I think we use Epic, right? That like subscription service. But what happens is it's a big fat jigsaw. I put students into different groups and each group gets a different version. They get a children's book and they do like a read aloud and they either pass the book around, however the group wants to do it. They pass the book around. Oh, I've lost track of what day this is. You know, I'll post my calendar for this unit in the blog post too for this video, just so that you can like see it all. But they are asked to lead their own learning, which is a great place to be for seniors. If you want to do something like this, whether it's Cinderella or something completely different with younger students, modify, right, at will, however you need to make it make sense, and scaffold however you need to do to make it make sense for your level of learners. These are 12th graders, so like, figure it out, everybody. Here are some ideas of how you could do it. Oop, dropping my papers. But they are in groups of probably like 4, maybe 3, depending on how many are in the class. And they do a read aloud, and then I ask them to go through a whole entire analysis, looking at all the elements of a fairy tale from the very first day that we were looking at the societal norms, what is expected in the society based on what they see from the art or from the story that comes from this place and time. Do a little bit of research about Cinderella from this culture, like when are we kind of looking at that this specific story is coming from, right? Like dig into it a little bit, just like pretty surface level research, and then also analyzing the values of society based on what they see in the story that's being taught to their children. So this goes on for probably a day or 2 so that students can really dig in and do some good analysis. This is also a great opportunity for conversation. And then there's definitely a share out moment that we have within the whole entire class where each group gets up and they kind of, you could do posters. I just have them present and like hold up the book and explain to us what insights they can gain, and we ask questions, and it's pretty informal. And then the end of this unit takes all of this and actually does like a whole writing task. I've got a couple of articles that I have them analyze about fairy tales, about their function and their purpose within society, about children's stories and their function and purpose within society, and then taking in everything that they know about different versions of Cinderella, about some different articles that we've looked at about children's stories, about fairy tales specifically. They have a writing prompt, and the writing prompt is to answer the following question. Should fairy tales be reflected? Nope. Should fairy tales be updated to reflect contemporary societal values? Boom. That spurs a whole conversation about what does that mean? What does updated mean? What are current societal values? And then students are allowed to write. I do have some pretty good parameters on the writing task itself, and it gives me then an opportunity too, because this is the very beginning of the year, to go through claim writing and writing a substantial and like engaging claim that's nuanced and interesting for a senior. If you're doing something like this with the younger kids, scaffold appropriately. We go through embedding quotes and using evidence to back up what you are saying. So it's like figure out what you're saying first, and then what can you say to back it up, and then also embedding literature and examples from the stories that they've been reading in order to back up their claim and their opinion with actual text. So that was a lot. I wanted to give you a lot of information. Really, the whole idea here is that you have a good overview of what the whole entire unit looks like, from beginning, from essential question, from first like gateway activity all the way through summative assessment, which is a substantial piece of writing that is incorporating research and literature and making an argument beginning to end. Takes probably about 2.5, maybe 3 weeks on my quarter system. So if you're on a semester system, you can probably like double that, or maybe at least like time and a half. And it is a great way to get students digging into literature in a format, in fairy tales, in children's stories. It's highly engaging, and it is not particularly, intimidating, because it seems like it's gonna be really easy until you hit them with a question like, should fairy tales be updated to reflect contemporary societal norms? And then they're like, what? And when I'm doing this in the very beginning of the school year, they always kind of look at me like, why are you making me try so hard? Because it's school, and because you can, and because you can do this. So ways that this kind of a unit, that you could take the shell of what I've just explained and take a look at the unit calendar that I'm going to be including in the blog post, and you could adapt it to other things, is you could have a whole different genre of short stories and look at it just for like genre specific. Do all the things that I just did, except instead of fairy tales, it could be dystopia. Instead of fairy tales, it could be sci-fi, right? You could do a whole lot of different things. Oh my gosh, you go with like The Illustrated Man and do a whole thing on sci-fi and its purpose and like what it serves for us. Okay, that might be the next unit that I'm writing. That could be really, really cool. But we got enough questions after the podcast episode that I wanted to give you a little bit of insight. And like I said, I will also link, if you want to do like this, because Cinderella is super fun. If you want to do this exact unit, I will link the actual list of books that I use, because I think that that's helpful to kind of look at that in the blog post. But thank you so much for joining me. I know that that was fast and quick overview for you. That was pretty much what people are asking for. So I just wanted to deliver exactly what the audience needs. And if you have been around the Caffeinated Classroom for a while, I'm very excited to tell you that I will be back with regular videos starting up right now. My goal is to do 2 a month, something like this and something within my actual classroom. So I am putting together a classroom tour and a little bit of classroom setup for later this month, and I cannot wait to get back in my classroom and invite you all back in and start doing some Teach With Me videos, some Plan With Me videos. It's good to be back. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said many times, check out the blog post that is linked down below this video for more information, and I will see you next time. Bye.